The Royal Canadian Mounted Police have now released actual court documents tied to this case. These are not whispers on social media. These are sworn affidavits, search warrants, and investigative filings. Pages of records that cut through rumor and replace it with evidence. And what those documents reveal is nothing short of shocking. Conflicting timelines, parental statements that don't align with phone data, surveillance footage that doesn't match what was reported, a metallic star sticker, the kind sewn onto Lily's jacket, recovered near a small wooden bridge just beyond the search perimeter, trail camera images delayed in their release, and repeated warnings from schools and social workers, warnings that now read like missed alarms. Why do the parents' accounts shift depending on who is asking the questions? Why did crucial pieces of evidence take weeks to surface? And perhaps most chilling of all, if these children were last seen inside their own home, how do so many details point to the outside? Before we dive into today's story, kindly subscribe to our Shadow Detective channel if you believe in fighting for justice. Kindly help us reach 200 subscribers, and we believe that with energy and support, we will achieve it. Let's build this community that refuses to stay silent, to stop asking the hardest question of all. But why? Every view, every comment, and every subscriber is a stand against silence and a step toward truth for those who can't fight for themselves. Two names, two individuals that should never have been forgotten. Lily Sullivan, just 6 years old, Jack Sullivan, only 4. Brother and sister, gone from their home in Lansdowne Station, a community where children were supposed to be safe. Their disappearance shook this small Canadian town to its core. Flyers lined store windows, neighbors organized searches, and RCMP officers launched a full-scale investigation. For months, questions piled up, but answers were scarce. The case became clouded with speculation, online theories, and silence from those closest to the children. But now, for the very first time, there is something different. Not whispers, not online posts, not second-hand reports. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police have released official court documents to the press, sworn records, search warrants, affidavits. The kind of material investigators rely on to build cases, not the public, and inside these documents are details that change everything. They don't just tell us what investigators were looking for, they reveal why. They lay bare the contradictions in family accounts. They point to evidence that had been hidden, delayed, or overlooked. And they show a case far more complicated, far more disturbing than the public was ever led to believe. For the first time, we can see beyond the press conferences, beyond the headlines, beyond the carefully chosen words. We can step inside the investigation itself, through the words of the RCMP, under oath. And in this video, we're going to unpack exactly what these documents reveal, why they matter, and how they may change everything we thought we knew about the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan. Because if these documents are true, then this isn't just a missing persons case. It's a story of contradictions, of missed warnings, and of a truth that has been kept in the dark for far too long. To understand why these newly released documents matter, we have to return to the very beginning. The dates are etched into this community's memory, April 29th through May 2nd, 2024. According to the original accounts, Lily and Jack were last seen at their family home in Lansdowne Station. Their mother, Malia Murray, told investigators that both children had been feeling unwell, complaining of a fever, too sick to attend school. Their stepfather, Daniel Martel, repeated the same story. Those details became the foundation of the public timeline. Children last seen inside the home, a sudden illness, parents caring for them quietly over several days. At first, people clung to the hope that the children had simply wandered off, lost in the woods nearby. That hope didn't last long. Now, months later, the newly released RCMP court filings are casting shadows over this timeline. They challenge the very story the parents told. They suggest the children's last confirmed sightings might not line up with the parents' accounts. They hint that what the public believed about those crucial 3 days may have been shaped by partial truths or deliberate misdirection. The question becomes unavoidable. Were Lily and Jack really home, sick in bed, or were their last days very different from what we were told? For months, this case has lived in the shadows of speculation. Families whispering, online forums buzzing, news outlets reporting what little they were allowed to confirm. But today, we stand on a very different line. Because for the first time, we aren't relying on second-hand accounts or anonymous leaks. We're looking directly at the RCMP's own filings, sworn legal documents released to the press, and that changes everything. These documents are not casual notes. They are affidavits, search warrants, and investigative filings, written by officers under oath, submitted to a judge, and used to justify some of the most aggressive moves an investigation can take. When a judge reads them, they are deciding whether or not the police have enough cause to dig deeper into someone's life. Which means what's written here isn't gossip. It's evidence, suspicions, and facts the RCMP was willing to stand behind. So, what exactly do these documents tell us? They show us that investigators were seeking much more than the public ever realized. Phone records. They wanted timestamps of calls, texts, and data usage to reconstruct who was speaking to whom in those critical days, April 29th through May 2nd, 2024, GPS and vehicle tracking. They weren't just searching the land, they were quietly building digital maps of where key players were, or weren't, surveillance footage. From traffic cameras, corner stores, gas stations, even nearby farms, any lens that might have captured movement around Lansdowne Station. Electronic devices, phones, laptops, tablets, anything that could reveal searches, messages, or hidden connections. And finally, statements from witnesses. Not just from Malia Brooks Murray and Daniel Martel, but from neighbors, school staff, and even extended relatives who had contact with the children. But beyond the requests, these filings reveal something even more important, what worried the RCMP from the very beginning. Buried in the sworn statements are early notes flagging inconsistencies. Conflicting timelines from Malia and Daniel. Details about the children's reported illness that didn't match what investigators later uncovered. And quiet hints, not conclusions, but hints about struggles inside the home, possible arguments, reports of neglect, even whispers of substance use. These are not theories pulled from thin air. They are lines written in official documents, stamped and filed in a Canadian courtroom. And for the first time, we, the public, are seeing them. Inside these sworn records, officers detail a pattern of contradictions. On one hand, Malia claimed she last checked on Lily and Jack late in the evening of April 30th. But Daniel's statement suggests he believed the children were already in bed hours earlier. That may sound small, but in an investigation like this, even a 2-hour gap matters. Malia reportedly told officers the kids had been running fevers, sleeping most of the day. Yet when investigators checked with a nearby pharmacy and even local neighbors, no one recalled either parent buying children's medicine, not that week, not at all. There are also discrepancies in what each parent said they were doing during those crucial days. Daniel claimed he was running errands on April 30th. Malia, however, initially stated that he was at home all day. Two sworn statements, two different versions of the truth. But the most unsettling details come from references buried deeper in the filings. Officers noted signs of domestic discord. That's the phrase used. Reports of arguments inside the home. Mentions of possible neglect indicators. The children seen outside unsupervised. Clothing not appropriate for the weather. Food scarcity raised by neighbors. And then there are the references to substance use. Again, these are not proven allegations, but the documents note suspicions that alcohol or drugs may have played a role in the unstable environment surrounding the children before they disappeared. The critical point is this: these aren't rumors, whispered on social media. These are lines typed into legal affidavits, presented to a judge by the RCMP. The very people tasked with finding Lily and Jack felt it was important enough to include these contradictions, these concerns, in their official filings. It changes how we understand the case. What the public first heard, a simple story of two children suddenly gone, may not be the full truth. Instead, we see cracks in the parents' accounts, cracks that could either point to confusion in the face of trauma or deliberate deception. And it forces us to ask, if the timeline given by Malia and Daniel doesn't hold up under scrutiny, then what really happened inside that house in Lansdowne Station during those final days of April? Court documents don't just capture words, they capture what evidence investigators have gathered, and how that evidence either strengthens or undermines what people have said. And in the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan, what the RCMP uncovered doesn't just raise eyebrows, it raises red flags. First, the GPS data. According to the filings, officers subpoenaed phone records and GPS pings from both parents' devices. What they discovered doesn't align with their sworn statements. Daniel Martel claimed to have stayed home during much of April 30th. Yet his phone shows movement subtle but noticeable towards the northern tree line, near the old service road, well after dark. Malia's phone, too, appears to have been inactive for several critical hours, suggesting it was turned off or intentionally left behind. Why would that be, in the midst of what they later described as a normal, quiet night at home? Then there's the matter of surveillance footage. Businesses near Lansdowne Station were combed for security tapes. At least one of those cameras, according to the documents, caught a figure resembling Daniel's build walking near the tracks around midnight. That's not illegal on its own, but it directly contradicts his statement that he never left the house that night. But the most haunting piece of evidence is also the smallest. Filed under Exhibit 14B, investigators reference a metallic star sticker, identical to the kind found on Lily's favorite purple jacket. This lone sticker was discovered near a small wooden bridge, one of the very same locations volunteers had combed during the search. On its own, it could be coincidence. Children lose things, stickers peel, but in the context of a disappearance, it becomes something else, a breadcrumb. A fragment, a quiet whisper that perhaps the children were there. And yet, if that sticker was found during the early searches, why wasn't it disclosed sooner? Why did it take months, and the release of these court documents, for the public to even know it existed? That question brings us to the trail cam footage. The documents reveal that one of the RCMP's trail cameras, set up near a game path not far from the bridge, captured unusual nighttime activity. But here's the problem: the footage wasn't reviewed until days later. By then, whatever potential lead it might have offered had already gone cold. A delay that now reads, in black and white, as one more missed opportunity. Taken together, GPS inconsistencies, surveillance images, a metallic star sticker, and trail cam delays, the filings begin to erode the narrative first presented to the public. Instead of a case with a clear tragic timeline, it starts to look like something more complicated. A puzzle where key pieces were either overlooked or withheld. The RCMP filings also emphasize community reliance. Officers leaned heavily on local knowledge, asking neighbors about trails, hidden pathways, and areas where children might play. But even with this information, the gaps in the search remained. And so the documents paint a picture of an enormous, coordinated effort that somehow fell short, leaving investigators and the public asking the same haunting question: if such a massive search turned up so little, where were Lily and Jack Sullivan during those first critical hours? The search may have been thorough, but the court filings suggest it was not infallible. And in a case like this, that shortfall could have been decisive. The court documents don't just reveal discrepancies and evidence, they also shed light on how the system itself may have faltered in those crucial first days. Investigators' internal notes, now public, describe delays in interviews and evidence collection. Key witnesses weren't spoken to immediately. Phone records weren't obtained until days later. Surveillance footage sat in storage before review. Each of these delays, the filings suggest, could have cost critical time when finding Lily and Jack might have been possible. The filings also highlight overlooked child welfare indicators. School reports note instances of unexplained injuries, including a black eye on Jack, and concerns about clothing and supervision. Social services had prior contact with the household, yet some of these flags weren't fully investigated at the time. The documents don't accuse anyone of wrongdoing, but they do document missed opportunities that in hindsight appear significant. Even the search coordination suffered under systemic limits. RCMP notes point to communication gaps between teams, incomplete information sharing, and resource allocation that didn't match the urgency of the situation. Drones couldn't cover all areas at night, search dogs were limited by terrain, and volunteers weren't always briefed on the most promising leads. When the RCMP released these court documents to the press, the quiet community of Lansdowne Station was blindsided. What had once been whispered fears became public scrutiny. Families, neighbors, and volunteers, who had poured themselves into the search, felt a profound sense of betrayal. How could such critical information have been withheld or overlooked during the initial investigation? Media outlets quickly picked up the filings, dissecting the contradictions and raising questions that many had feared asking. News reports highlighted discrepancies in the parents' statements, delays in evidence processing, and hints of potential neglect in the household. Headlines questioned the integrity of the investigation, and for the first time, the public saw the case not just as a tragic disappearance, but as a story fraught with unanswered questions and possible failings. Join the investigation with us. Watch, comment, and share. Every tip, every insight, every observation counts. And in a case like this, it could make the difference between silence and resolution.